Hey everybody, welcome to another video. This is Music Man 82, and tonight I want to introduce you to my wife Rachel. She has been with me on a lot of trips over the years. You've seen her in the Lonesome Mountain adventure that I posted a few weeks back. Today we're going to be doing a short video on Jackson Peak, and if you've never heard of Jackson Peak, there's probably a reason why. It's a fairly obscure Wyoming 13er. But it is the 8th highest peak in Wyoming at 13,517 feet, and it is one of the 4 13ers that rings the Indian Basin. So this video will be all about our 2014 trip climbing that peak. So this trip was done in the summer of 2014, and it was Rachel's first ever backpacking trip into the woods. She'd never been in the range before, and if I am right, this was a really big moment for you because you just were like, you fell in love with the range like I did.
Yeah, definitely. This was my first 13,000 foot peak and above, and since then, it was the first moment that I learned the concept of, in the mountains, everything is always beyond what you think it is. So you think something's a summit and then you get there. No, you got a long ways to go. Jackson was definitely one of those. You get to the top and all of a sudden you have this like snowfield that goes on forever, and you finally get to the rocks and you're still not to the top and that kind of thing. I think the only one that really doesn't follow that description would be like Sunbeam.
Yeah.
All the other 13ers have been that way. So
yeah, and Sunbeam will be coming up in a future trip. I'm doing the winds trips kind of in chronological order from what we did. So the first 2 days of this trip were fairly straightforward. We started at Elkhart Park and backpacked into Hobbs Lake the very first day. And then I don't have a ton of pics from the first 2 days, but the second morning we went up and over near Island Lake and then took the Indian Basin junction and had planned to go a little higher, but we kind of were like, let's stop. We probably stopped like half a mile above the junction. It was like, the less, the distance we carry in, the less of a distance we have to carry out. So we had a little bit longer walk in the morning to make it to the summit, but overall it was a beautiful camp spot. I remember we had a really sunny afternoon and spent a lot of time just hanging out, looking at the mountains and watching the clouds go by. So it was one of those beautiful days in the winds. On the morning of day 3, we headed farther up into Indian Basin, and it's one of my favorite places in the world, if not my absolute favorite place in the world. I just love it up there. The trail gets more and more faint as you approach Indian Pass. Kind of probably less than a mile before the pass, you have to start looking off to the left for a route up through the cliff bands that guard the upper reaches of Jackson Peak. There are conflicting reports as to whether this peak is class 2 or class 3, and I think the route we found would probably go at class 2. I don't think anything was class 3 where you had to use your hands to climb it, though it was helpful. Maybe call it class 2 plus.
Like the scree going
Yeah, it was very loose. I remember we didn't even think to bring helmets on this trip, but there was a lot of rockfall coming down. If you remember, we'd be, kind of walking up and just hear these rocks coming down, and they were very frequent. It was probably the most I've ever regretted not having a helmet, just because of the amount of rock fall. There was one tricky little section where I remember Rachel decided to actually just get on some rock and do a little climbing. And she made a lot of fun of me after that.
Well, I wasn't comfortable with the loose stuff because I had no experience with it at that point. So I was more comfortable, even though things were more vertical and covered in grass, climbing that stuff than going on the loose. But Tim was too scared to go on the vertical stuff, so, you know.
She's a much better climber than I am. So yeah, she's made fun of me ever since then about not wanting to actually go climbing. But once we got above, kind of got up a ramp around kind of one of the steeper sections, it was just a loose grease log up to where the snow started. There's a permanent snow field up there. And got on that, and like she said earlier, it just kept going. You know, every time you think you were getting somewhere, there'd be more snow, and you finally get to the top, and it's a very, very high mountain. You know, you're within a few hundred feet of the highest peaks in Wyoming, and amazing summit views.
I think part of why it was so discouraging is because getting up the steep loose stuff was such a climb, and then so much elevation gain going through that when you finally get to the top, you think you've got to be super close, and
you weren't.
You're not. But it was very broad and very, there was hardly any elevation gain at that point. It was just a lot of distance.
Yeah, we had a really nice morning for it, a lot of cloud cover, but no weather, so it kept it cool. The views up north to Gannett and over the Fremont Glacier were really cool. It's kind of a neat spot because when you're on top of Fremont, you kind of have Sacagawea and Helen in line with Gannett, but here you're a little bit east of there, and you can see a lot more of the area that includes like Turret and those peaks kind of southeast of Gannett. So it was a really cool summit, and I don't think there was a register up there.
I don't remember.
From what I remember, I don't think there was a register. There may be one added since.
Weren't we a little confused on which spot was
the
summit? Yeah,
there are kind of two spots that are fairly close in height. So we went to both. I think the first one you reach is the highest one. Yeah. It had a bigger cairn on it. Then we carefully made our way down, tried not to put too many rocks on each other, and made it back to camp in pretty good time, I think. And then spent the third night at camp there. from where we were camped back out to the car was a long day. Upwards of 15 miles, I'm guessing, and we had to be at work the next day, and so it was one of those things we just kind of had to get out, and those definitely qualify in my book as a march of death. I don't think either of us quite knew just how strenuous that was going to be getting out of there. And the crazy thing is after we got to the car, we're like, never again. We've done it several times since then. So
that first time was definitely different. You don't have, well, you don't have past experiences to
gauge
have
where
your
you're at.
reality of what it's going to be like. But I remember, because we always talk about how the last 5 miles out is just so monotonous because it's in the trees and everything looks the same.
For over an hour, it just looks like the same scenery.
Yeah, and I remember that was before we started packing music and, things to keep us occupied for, treks like that. And I was ahead and I was hurting so badly that I had to just find a very fast pace, because I wanted to get out of there and just stick to it. My feet were just dying, and I remember Tim kind of dropped behind me, and I was hurting so badly I couldn't even look back to see where he was or if he was alive. I was just like, gotta get to the car, and then if he's dead, I'll go back in a day or so.
Yeah, within probably a few hundred yards of the trailhead, we had a little hailstorm. Yeah, and I think my right hip flexor was hurting so bad, like just taking steps was agony, and she was pulling farther and farther ahead. And this was our first summer together as a couple, and I was just like, wow, she's kicking my butt. This is awesome. I found a good one.
This was not due to physical strength. It was just pain. Pain was pushing me forward.
So yeah, we got to the car and then dropped down in Pinedale, went to Subway, and I remember waddling around in there like
we looked ridiculous, and there were lots of people in there, and
yeah, they're like, why are these two young people hobbling around?
I don't know, they probably have seen, if they lived there, they've probably seen it enough.
Seen the hikers come out of it. So really cool trip. It's not a peak that's climbed often, but definitely one that's got great summit views, and just another amazing summit in my favorite area on earth. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you around for more videos. Cheers.